Hi, everybody, and welcome to Week 11. Week 11 is about chapters 28 and 29, which are the Art of Pacific Cultures or Oceania and the Art of Africa. So, part 1 is about Pacific Islands or Oceania. You may have noticed that the two chapters that are covered by this lecture have a slightly different approach than we're used to. For one, both mostly deal with art from the modern age, from 1800s forward. The nature of oceanic and African art history and archaeology make this approach pretty reasonable. Both areas of the world present issues to the student and scholar that make them more difficult to access in a traditional art historical way. We'll touch upon these issues within the module. In Chapter 28, we examine the four main regions of Oceania, or the Pacific Islands, and you can see them here on the screen. These four regions include the continent of Australia, and the peoples of Oceania share some common ancestry and many cultural characteristics, but insular island life creates distinctive languages, customs, and art forms. Oceania is usually divided into four regions. Those regions are identified on the map on the screen. There's Australia, Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia. These terms are Western terms that serve to group the cultures for the study of them by Europeans. Australia means southern land, and Europeans tended to refer to Australia as an unknown southern land. Melanesia means dark or black islands. This is Melanesia here. And this is a term based on the European perception that the inhabitant's skin is dark. Micronesia, which is up here, means small islands and refers to the relatively small size of the islands in that region. And then Polynesia, the fourth one over here, means many islands, and it could refer to a couple things, either the sheer number, over 1,000 of islands, or it could refer to the variety of sizes of islands in the region, which include tiny islands like Tahiti or Marquesas, includes the Hawaiian Islands, and it also includes New Zealand, which we can't really see on the screen. Let me pull it down a little bit and you can see. So there's a variety of sizes of islands covered by Polynesia. And you'll find further descriptions of each of these when we discuss them. Although the indigenous groups who occupy Oceania traditionally spoke thousands of languages and had their own regional cultural practices, we can generalize about them according to some traits, many of which are related to their art forms. For example, although it's carried out differently from place to place, ancestor veneration is celebrated through public and private ceremonies all over Oceania. These ceremonies are often planned and organized in men's or communal houses that we will see take on similar shapes throughout the region. These rituals and their objects are sometimes planned and created in secret, away from women especially, although there is ethnographic evidence to suggest that women do actually take on important roles behind the scenes, but that this is not acknowledged. Ancestor veneration usually takes the shape of mass dancing rituals, some of which involve the larger community, including women. Throughout Oceania, the concept of mana dominates spiritual life. Mana is the idea that a magical spiritual force can inhabit inanimate objects, so it's an animistic concept. Mana is something like the Taoist Qi or Shinto Kami, but not exactly. Mana brings power to the owner or user of an object, and the concept is central to the ordering of traditional societies in Oceania. Items with mana are passed down through the generations from family member to family member. Similarly, tapu or taboo often also defines objects and actions. Some objects or actions are forbidden or undesirable, and tapu or taboo is the origin of our word taboo. It may be interesting for you to compare some art forms of Oceania, like the ancestor and deity images of Polynesia, to images from Week 10 of the Northwest Coastal Cultures art. One diffusion theory holds that Polynesian and other oceanic cultures shared similarity with North American and Asian art forms, perhaps due to contact between them across the ocean. But the nature of this contact, if it ever occurred, is not known. But you can see, right? Whoops. When you look at the map, that proximity is possible. Like the Americas, Oceania, or the Pacific region, is one of the last places on Earth to be populated by humans. In a situation similar to the Bering Land Bridge, during the last ice age, the Pacific Ocean between Asia and Africa and the Philippines, Malaysia and Australia, all of this sort of area in here, was pretty dry. And so it's believed that people started migrating to Oceania via Australia and the island of New Guinea around 60,000 BCE. So people came from Asia to New Guinea and Australia and then went on from there. People moved into the rest of Melanesia and Micronesia by probably around 27,000 BCE is when we start to see people here. But Polynesia may not actually have had significant populations before 3000 BCE, only about 5,000 years ago. The latest spread of culture that brought people to Polynesia around 3000 BCE is attributed to a group of people called the Lapita culture. The Lapita culture dates back to around 4000 BCE and appears to have originated in Melanesia. The culture is identified as occupying a variety of islands throughout Oceania by its pottery. And here you can see some shards of Lapita pottery. The Lapita culture also produced some sculptures in the shapes of animals. This sculpture, called the ombum stone, formed finials or pestles used to grind nuts, seeds, or other substances. The ombum stone is in the anthropomorphic shape of a hybrid with a human body and an echidna or anteater head, the snout of which forms the handle of the pestle. Other Lapita pestle finials were decorated with more geometric, floral, or bird or phallus shapes. Although the Lapita culture presents us with some evidence of very early oceanic culture, this is limited mostly to the direction and timing of the spread of culture in the later phase. Direct evidence and information eludes us because of the coastal nature of most oceanic cultures, which usually presents a problem for preservation of artifacts because of flooding. Furthermore, many oceanic art forms are made of materials that don't last more than a few hundred years, including wood and fiber materials. Finally, many traditional oceanic peoples do not have as a cultural value the need or desire to save objects for long periods of time. This desire to dispose of artworks after they've fulfilled their function is also true for Africa, and we saw, to some degree, true for the Americas as well. Australia. Of the 4 oceanic regions, Australia has been inhabited the longest. People began to inhabit the northern edge of Australia from about 60,000 BC onward. The Aborigines, or indigenous people of Australia, have been making art for tens of thousands of years, and many artworks date to the earlier phases of Australian migration. The images known as the Bradshaw rock paintings have been dated to 50,000 BCE. The images seem to depict humans, and they've been interpreted as dancing. At Ounpelli in Arnhem Land, many images overlap one another. The rock faces appear to have been altered many times over thousands of years. You can see that here. These paintings also date to the Paleolithic period from about 50,000 BCE onward. They depict figures familiar to traditional Aboriginal people, animals, and mimes, which are ancient humanoid ancestors. You can see one on the screen. Mimes, along with the animals and other features of the landscape, are considered to be animistic ancestors that inhabit the earth and have since its creation. These ancient ancestors created the earth and everything within it. The animals are depicted in an X-ray style, meaning they show the innards of the animals. It's believed, you could see like the spine of the fish here, for example. See the lungs here, for example. It's believed that this method, the X-ray style, allows the artist to show the most important parts of the animals, and therefore the images are as informative as possible about their subjects. The origin mythologies of the Aborigines vary, but most share a common belief in several myths.
One unifying element of these myths is the existence of something called the dreaming or dream time. This is translated from the Walpiri term jukurpa and does not mean the same thing as our dreaming. The dreaming or dream time is a place outside of time, sort of an alternate plane which has always existed. Indigenous Australians are believed to each have their own landscape in dream time. Some artists articulate their dream time in images similar in style to those on Paleolithic rock faces. These paintings are traditionally painted on bark and may depict ancient myths and mythological figures like Auenau, which you can see on the screen. Contemporary Aborigines also often paint Dreamtime images. Much like Hopi revival pottery in the American Southwest of last week, Dreamtime paintings provided an outlet for a colonized people to exhibit and celebrate their traditional beliefs. Melanesia. Melanesia is the region of Oceania that includes the large island of New Guinea. New Guinea is divided today into East and West. Irian Jaya in the west is part of Indonesia, while Papua New Guinea is a separate nation in the east. Melanesia also includes Solomon Islands, New Ireland, New Caledonia, and Fiji. New Guinea is the largest island in Melanesia. The second largest island in the world, it offers a very diverse climate to its inhabitants, from tropical to mountainous. Over 900 languages and untold numbers of cultures have developed on New Guinea. Traditionally, Papua New Guinea or PNG peoples and about 90% of its inhabitants today rely on farming, especially of yams. Yams not only provide a staple food, but also a symbol of fertility of lands and humans. In the so-called yam cults of Papua New Guinea, yams are phallic symbols, the size of which indicates the power of the farmer. These yams are not hoarded, but given away to one another to represent one's wealth. Another activity practiced traditionally in New Guinea and throughout Southeast Asia is headhunting. Although headhunting in New Guinea largely ended after Western colonization, it was once a major element of Melanesian culture. You can read much more about headhunting in Melanesia in the link provided in the online lecture. The Abalam culture of the mountain region is representative of PNG's cultural heritage. Like most oceanic cultures, their ceremonies and rituals are planned and sometimes carried out in a men's house. The tambourine house that you're seeing on the screen is a sort of men's house that's decorated with human figural representations, which you can see in these faces, that are supposed to be inhabited by spirits. Young initiates are guided by elders and ancestors in the ceremonies. Several coming-of-age ceremonies last for decades. Walking under the legs of the female tetepeku, as if the initiates are being reborn, is how one enters or leaves the tambourine. One emblematic ritual of the Alema culture of PNG is the Hevehe ceremony, a water goddess festival that is on a very long 10 to 20 year cycle. Large masks on standards, which you can see here, emerge from their men's house, which is called an iravo. These and other masks are part of mass dancing ceremonies. Notice that the tambourine and the iravo houses are both tall with gabled or pointed roofs. On the other half of New Guinea, in Irian Jaya, lives the Asmat culture. The Asmat live in a lowlands and rainforest climate. They believe their ancestors, whom they honor in the Bish Mubu ceremony, were carved of wood. So their ancestors are represented by the Mbij or Bish poles that are seen on the screen, which are created specially for the Bish Mubu ceremony. This ceremony appeases those ancestors. The creation of the poles reenacts headhunting. The tree is cut down or beheaded. The bark is removed, representing skinning of a victim, and the sap is let to run, like letting the blood of a victim. The poles feature several human figures stacked on top of one another, which you can see here, here, and here, and also in these images taken in a museum. And this is much like the ancestors or totem poles in the cultures on the northwest coast of North America that we've seen. The top figure sports a sgemin or an enlarged penis that is carved with filigree designs. Not only does the Bish Mubu ceremony appease ancestors, but it also assures that the deceased go on to the afterlife or safana. Eventually, the poles are taken down and left to go back to the earth in the rainforest. On the island of New Ireland, several funerary rituals are very elaborate and also involve the creation of artwork and dancing performances. The Malangun ceremony is a funerary ritual that involves all of the community and celebrates many deceased. It also can be a boy's coming of age ritual. Funerary masks replicate display of the corpse. The masks made for the Tatanua dance, which you can see on the screen, a funerary ritual for men only, represent masculinity, not specific people. Sometimes spirits inhabit these masks, and other times they are just images. The hairstyle is supposed to be imitative of ancient fashions worn by the ancestors on top of skeletal faces. Here are a couple of examples of Tatanua masks in action. One last important art form found in Melanesia, as elsewhere, is the ship prow. You can see a figural prow on the screen here and here. Both of these are carved of wood and inlaid shell. The images and styles of the ship prow vary within Melanesia as well as the rest of Oceania. Micronesia. Micronesia includes small island chains like the Caroline Islands, including Palau, the Mariana Islands, and the Marshall Islands. Cultures in Micronesia traditionally are complicated social hierarchies supported by the arts. Like other oceanic culture groups, Micronesian cultures utilize men's or community houses. These are known as bai or chief's houses, and we'll see those shortly. The house of Chief Taga, which we can see in a reconstruction drawing, is supported by lati. Looks like the way we spell the coffee drink latte, but it's pronounced lati. These lati are stone supports with cushion-shaped capitals, and they are very large. The lati you can see here in this better reconstruction compared with a man. The lati are a unique feature of the Mariana Islands, but the gabled shape of the house that you see here should already be familiar and will continue to be familiar to us in Micronesia. The Bai-Rai-Rai of Palau is a community house with a similar shape. See the shape here, but you can see that it is a long house, and this is often used as a community house, hence the length. In this Bai house from Palau, you can see the Dilukai. There she is, right there. The Dilukai is a protective, welcoming female figure, similar to the Tetepeku of New Ireland. Missionaries from the West, encountering these images, discouraged their display and concocted negative stories that became associated with the figures. Micronesian artists are distinguished in Oceania for what's perceived to be a greater use of abstraction in their artwork. Two more images of Dilukai here. Ship prows are highly abstract, with geometric designs that may have symbolic meaning that has been lost. Human statuettes, called sacred figures, also bear an abstract appearance. Polynesia. In square mileage, Polynesia has the largest area of Oceania, though only about 100,000 square miles of it is actually livable land. Polynesia includes Hawaii, New Zealand, which you can just see a little bit of here. Let me pull this down. There we go. There you can see New Zealand a little bit better, along with Hawaii, the Cook Islands, which I don't know if I can see those on the screen, the Marquesas Islands, Tahiti, Rapa Nui is actually off the screen, which is Easter Island, Tonga, and Samoa. Polynesia is believed to be the last area of the world inhabited by humans. As in Micronesia, Polynesian societies are also highly stratified. Members of the upper classes claim to be descended directly from the creator gods. Worn art forms have mana, and they confer special status and protection on the wearer. These items are passed down through generations. Feather items like standards or cloaks are particularly rich as they are made of precious and rare materials. The yellow feathers that you're seeing here that decorate this cloak are very difficult to acquire. The feather cloak you're seeing on the screen, which you can see the hem at the top here and then the neck at the bottom, was given by King Kamehameha of Hawaii to Captain Cook. Bark cloth called tapu or nugatu, or even saipo, is another important worn art form. Bark cloth is created by beating mulberry bark fibers repeatedly so that they cling to one another to create a solid sheet of fabric, much like how felt is made with wool by beating wool with the use of hot water. Bark cloth is created typically by women who also decorate the fabric with printed and stenciled images and with freehand painting. As a valuable material, bark cloth is sometimes used as currency and, like the yams of the Abalam people, is given away as a show of wealth and as a gesture of goodwill. Images of tiki mythological ancestors can be worn as ornaments on the body. These images are usually crafted of bone, wood, or ivory. Tikis feature large eyes and grimacing faces, which are meant to frighten away any dangerous forces. Tiki are considered iconographically similar to Taotie masks of China and the ancestor pole images of northwest coastal cultures of North America. Another worn art form is tattooing. Our word tattoo comes from a Polynesian term called tatau. Tattoos are administered by priests called tuhuna. A tuhuna chooses appropriate images and placement of these images on the body. This process takes several days, during which the tuhuna will be hosted by the individual getting a tattoo. Similar to tiki images are the temple images, which sat on staffs or poles outside the temples to protect those inside. With his large eyes and screaming mouth, the temple god Kukailimoku, or Ku of Hawaii, whose name means Ku the Snatcher of Islands, resembles a tiki. But Ku is a war god and is meant to evoke the prowess of Hawaiian ancestors in their acquisition of the Polynesian islands. Several art forms combine in the meeting house of the Maori of New Zealand. The meeting house is of a typical gabled shape that we're used to with a pointed roof, but has several features unique in Oceania. The ridge pole, that is the pole at the apex of the roof, is decorated on its underside. If you approach the doorway and then look up, you'll see that it depicts ancient ancestor deities of Sky Father and Earth Mother. Above the door is a pare, or lintel, which you can see here, which depicts Papa, the Earth Mother. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. The eyes of this and the other figures are inlaid with shell, which gives them a sparkling appearance. In fact, in this image of Roate Pupuke, which is kind of blurry from the Film Museum's website, you can see lots of eyes glimmering back at us that shine with shell. Inside the meeting houses are usually more intricately carved images. Tiki or ancestor figures typically hold up the roof. You can see those here. On the walls, pupu, posts carved by men, and tuku, that is, images wove by women, line the walls. While there is little colossal sculpture in Oceania, the moai of Rapa Nui or Easter Island are a notable exception. The figures, mounted on ahu platforms, depict ancient ancestral chiefs. The figures also resemble tiki with large symmetrical faces. They are interpreted as either kneeling or alternatively submerged up to the waist. The moai were up to 70 feet tall and made of tufa, a volcanic rock. Originally, the moai may have marked the ancient burials of the chiefs. They date to between 1100 and 1500 CE, and they number over 1,000.